Hi, it's Terry from Show Me the Beauty back at the Artisan Market at Get Healthy, and I'm working on the three-piece table set that I am painting with the DIY weathered wood on top, apothecary on the legs, and then I now have liquid patina also by DIY, and then black wax over that. On the table that I have here that I'm going to try to show you a little bit of right now, I've got the liquid patina on the legs, and I have the black wax on there, which I have removed, but it didn't remove as much as I wanted it to remove, so I will be going back probably Tuesday when I'm back at work and going over that at that time with a little bit more clear wax to take some of that off. But I was anxious to get started to see whether I was going to like what I decided to do to the top. The top is in weathered wood because I was going to go with browns, but after I added the black wax, I thought the top needed a little bit of black to tie them in together, and I still wanted to put a little bit of weathered wood on there, apothecary on there for the light color. But I just found another boo-boo, so hopefully my mistakes will be things that you can learn from. And if this doesn't turn out okay, that's another reminder. It's just paint, and I can paint over it. That's why I wanted to make sure and try to do this portion of the project and this coat today as well. Because when I was looking at the tables, I went the wrong direction with the base coat on the two coats of weathered wood that are on this tabletop. I did the paint long ways on the other two. In the long run, that really probably won't make a whole lot of difference, but whenever you are doing a project, that kind of consistency is the thing that makes your project look more professional than somebody who's a beginner. So this is another one of the learn from my mistakes. My mistake was I wasn't paying attention. I had both of these small tables on a 6-foot table to paint them, and I was in a very cramped area. So I'm guessing at the time I was in a hurry as usual, and I was trying to get this paint on the best I could get it on, and I wasn't paying enough attention to what I was doing. I'm going to go with these other coats on top of it and see if it's going to be okay this way. If not, we'll put another coat of weathered wood on there and we'll start over. I was going to dry brush, but I had a dry brush fail on the other little table last week. Not real thrilled with how that turned out, so I'm going to try another technique today. I have my Paint Pixie brush. This is the larger one, the number 12. And I have poured just a little bit of, you probably can't see it, a little bit of apothecary and a little bit of Little Black Dress, both DIY paints. I have more of the apothecary than I do the Little Black Dress, so what I'm going to attempt to do here is I've soaked my brush about halfway up to go ahead and get some water in there. Then I laid it on my towel here to get a little bit of that water out, and I'm going to get about 2/3 of my brush. Well, I guess I'm gonna get about 1/3 of my brush with the apothecary, nothing in the center of that, and then maybe 1/6 of my brush with the black paint on it, and I'm just gonna try to go over it and see what happens. If I was dry brushing, I would now dab this on my rag here to get most of that off and go back and forth, but I want a little more of the paint to show. So we shall see what happens. I am going back and forth with it, and I think it's going to look pretty good. I decided not to seal underneath because earlier I had thought about loading a little more paint on here, even though I still have some. More black was showing up than apothecary, and I want them to be mixed in. I got a little bit of wave in that one, and I am trying to go straight across to get a little bit more of a weathered wood board effect. I'm dabbing just a little more of the apothecary on here this time and going back and forth, and I do not believe that you're going to be able to tell that underneath my original coat was in the wrong direction. Not sure. You'll have to see that when it dries, but I'm going to dab a little more of this on here and keep going. So this is not exactly dry brushing. This is sort of maybe damp brushing because I'm not putting whole amounts of paint on here as well. Probably shouldn't have started in the middle there, but part of what looks authentically old is having a little more paint here, a little more paint there, and not being completely consistent with it. Again, we're trying to make it look old and weathered and worn, not brand new and like it was just painted today. So the paint is relatively dry, as I said. I don't know whether I can see underneath here where the original paint went the other direction. So that's probably going to be a little crazy on here. I'm going to continue to do this. Maybe it'll differ when it dries, but I don't think so. I think I'm going to have to go back over this with the weathered wood and come back with it. What I'm going to do is switch my brush around to where I'm starting with the apothecary, which is sort of a light green color, sort of reminds me of the color of pistachio gelato, and go a little bit back and forth with that over the project, get a little more of that in there. I'm not really wanting to spray it. I don't exactly know what to do right this minute. It doesn't have the look that I want it to have, and we're fixing to see what happens if I mist it. I have my mister bottle, and I'm just lightly going to mist it to where the paint will glide over it a little bit better. And what I'm hoping that does is reactivate a little bit of that weathered wood underneath, so that for one, maybe it'll bleed out those brush marks, and for two, the black and the blue in this top won't show up as distinct of lines as they do right now, and it is anyway. So I'm gonna put a little more black on there, and at this point we're just doing whatever it takes to get the paint where we want it. So when you're thinking about shading and aging and trying to make this look older, what I'm going to do now is put a little more black on my brush and go to the areas here. I probably just put too much, but the areas here around the edges that are would normally have received a little more dirt over the years, and I'm going to just have put some more of my black in there, sort of job it into the edges like that. And the same thing here, there's a little curve right here, so there would probably be a little more of the dark paint in that curve than there would be on other areas of the table. So I'm going to back and forth a little bit more on those edges than I did the come on around with that, than I did the actual tabletop. And I'm trying to just blend that in a little bit so that it doesn't look so much like somebody just tried to put a faux finish on the top. Again, I'm going a little bit darker on the corners and in the indentations than in the flatter areas, just like you would, you know, any other area. You want to keep that, the outer areas would normally be a little lighter, and these areas would, a little more dirt would have collected there over the years. And then I want to kind of blend it in on the tabletop a little bit. And I'm coming around these edges. I was worried about them because I was not hitting them as much as I was when I was going back and forth. I wasn't hitting the edges as much as I was the actual top itself. So I'm making up for that now with a little bit of the blending and a little more of the dark than the light. But we can always come back. Here's another corner, so I'm going to add more black. We can always come back in with more of that apothecary later on, but I do want to make sure these top edges look a little more worn and look a little more dirty, as it were, because that's sort of the look that you get and that you want. I have my ring light going right now, so it's very bright, and I'm having a little bit of trouble telling how much I've got on here, but I want it to be blended so well. I don't want you to be able to see where I came in and am doing this edge blending right now so much. So I am doing that dry and just smudging those edges, trying to blend that in a little. So now at this point, I'm wishing it had a little more apothecary on there. So I'm barely getting any on there, and I am just gonna back and forth with that and just sort of blend it in a little. And this is just to lighten it up a little more in the areas that I just got too dark with the little black dress. It is still dry. I'm gonna just mist it. I don't want to reactivate that underpaint too very much, but I do want to get a little more of the apothecary on there, and I don't want it blended. I'm not wanting it to just be a light color there on top. I am wanting it to actually look like a piece of weathered wood, even though I'm going with the lighter and the darker colors. And if you are familiar with how barns really look, that is how they really look. A little bit around the edges, you can often, they haven't been sun bleached and things like that, and you can still see more of the darker colors and the natural colors underneath, to where with the outer parts get bleached and faded and turn gray and all the beautiful things that we love and think of as barn wood. But when you actually get a piece of wood off of a barn, when you pull it off, the pieces that weren't as exposed to the elements and the sun and the rain and snow, depending on where you're at, wind and all those things, are still going to have the darker color underneath. Okay, I think I'm getting to a point to where I better stop or I'm going to have a mess. And I went to floral school several years ago, and the lady's name was Miss John, Jeanne, but her name was Miss John. That was in New Orleans. And in floral school, you are taught there is step 1, which would be prepping your surface if you're talking about painting, and step 2, which would be priming if you were going to prime. And step 3 would be, you know, your first coat or your base coat. And step 4 would be your second coat to make sure you get good coverage. Step 5 would be your top coat or your waxing or whatever you want to be. And there were 6 steps in making a flower arrangement. And then there's step 7, and step 7 is you feel like you want to keep going, you feel like you need to do more to it, but you're really done. You need to back away from it, leave it alone, and come back and look at it tomorrow and see if you really do need to do more, or whether it's beautiful and you were just too close to the project. So I'm just about at step 7 on this. I'm wanting to make sure that my lines are straight. That's why I'm saying one thing and doing another here. So let me see if I can lean that down. Stick my brush in my water there. Grab the phone off here. And there's the top so far. I don't know how much of that, unrotated my phone, of that you can see. It's not as light as it appears in the phone, but there is light and dark, and I will probably put another coat of that on there on Tuesday. Also have a low battery there, but let me see if I can just flip the thing around. Okay, that's much easier for me to see. Okay, so there's the top as it is right now, which matches a good bit better with the legs now that there's black wax on the apothecary. I am going to add some more clear wax to ease some of that off on Tuesday, and probably put another coat just like I did just now on the top there. So check back in with me then, and we will be working on the table some more. Let me show you here. This is how shiny it looks. That's just with the liquid patina. There's my dry brushing fail we're going to work on, and then here is the coffee table with the black wax and some clear wax over the liquid patina, and I'm going to wait and do the top on it once I figure out exactly what I'm going to do, but I'm liking it better than I thought I would. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and we'll talk to you next week. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, if you're local, come on by. We have the DIY paint here for you. If you're not, I'll put my link in the comments, and Miss Debbie Beard and the DIY company will mail some of this paint right to your door. Thanks.